In the neon-lit cityscape of Neo Avalon, where silver spires reached greedily into a sky laced with swirling purple clouds, the everyday clamor of hovercrafts drifting between holographic billboards was broken by a broadcast that rippled across every channel. A hush fell upon the bustling streets. Men and women, humans and aliens alike, halted in their steps, eyes raised to the massive display screens that shimmered on every tower. The Earth Unity Council, the highest governing body in the entire solar quadrant, had announced a radical shift in policy. The newly enacted Alien Marriage Prohibition Act forbade all interspecies unions, demanding that non-human spouses be deported at once. In an instant, the dream of a future where humans and extraterrestrials could live in harmony was shattered, replaced by an edict that threatened to tear families apart. Jason Cross, a talented engineer known for his unwavering work ethic and gentle heart, stood in stunned silence in the grand atrium of Arcadia Complex, an architectural marvel in the heart of the city. The ceiling overhead was a network of translucent panels that revealed the swirling cosmos beyond, and, through them, faint glints of distant stars seemed to flicker ominously. Jason felt his breath catch in his throat. He had always believed Neo Avalon to be a beacon of progress, a place where open minds and open hearts converged. But now, as the official decree's words echoed coldly, all non-human spouses will be taken into custody for deportation. The city felt like a labyrinth of glass and steel that could collapse at any moment. He pressed his palm to his chest, feeling his heart thunder in protest, for he was married to Lyra, a beautiful Illyrian woman whose lilac skin and softly luminescent eyes first captured his gaze during the final days of the Orion War. They had forged a bond across the gulf of species, a love that blossomed amid the wreckage of conflict. Yet in the face of this new law, their love was declared illegal. Fear coiled in Jason's stomach like a venomous serpent, and he felt a deep sense of foreboding pull at his every thought. As the broadcast concluded, the massive screens dimmed, their glow fading into darkness, and a hush seemed to blanket the city. A pause, a silent intake of breath before the storm. Jason raced through the throng of people scrambling to react. The whole city had been cast into turmoil, with families uncertain of the law's immediate ramifications. Some humans cheered, driven by ignorance or fear, while others glared at them in open disapproval. The tension on the streets sizzled with dread. Jason's only goal was to get home, to ensure Lyra was safe. He wove through pedestrians whose faces mirrored dread, their footsteps uncertain, as overhead patrol drones began hovering in search formations. The hum of their engines filled Jason's ears with a mechanical buzzing that set his nerves on edge. He knew time was precious. Neo Avalon might have been a sanctuary of advanced engineering and cultural diversity only a day before, but now it threatened to become a cage for anyone seen as other. Finally, he reached their apartment, a modest unit high up in the Nexera Tower where a panoramic view of the city had once filled Lyra with wonder. The corridor lights flickered in agitation, as though the building itself sensed the shift in the air. When Jason stepped through the door, he found Lyra trembling by the hollow window, her luminous eyes brimming with tears. She was watching the official channels, cringing each time a notice scrolled across the screen. The law demanded that all alien spouses be taken, their future relocation sites unknown. She leaped into his arms the moment she caught sight of him, pressing her face into his chest, voice quivering with raw panic. Through her trembling, she murmured, "They've started raids in the southern districts. They're pulling families apart. Jason, we have to run now." He held her tight, trying to push away the dread that gripped him. She was everything to him, the bright star that illuminated his life, the reason he believed that love could transcend boundaries, even the boundaries of species. "I know," he whispered, his throat taut with fear. Outside their window, the night sky shimmered a deep violet, the neon signs below glaring like rows of watchful eyes. Jason's mind raced through possible plans, each one overshadowed by the unstoppable machinery of the government's new directive. He felt powerless, like a mere cog in the vast system that had turned malevolent overnight. With a shaky breath, Lyra broke away, wiping tears from her pale cheeks, and then, as if mustering every last bit of courage, She spoke words that changed everything. "Jason, I'm pregnant." A hush enveloped the room. Pregnant. A child of two worlds. A life they created together. Fear and joy clashed in Jason's mind in an instant. He pulled Lyra into another embrace, tears in his own eyes now, as a swirl of hope and terror rose in his chest. A half-Illyrian child would be a prime target under these draconian laws. They had to escape, not just for themselves, but for their unborn baby. And so, steeling himself, Jason declared, "We'll leave Neo Avalon. We'll find a way. I promise." They hurried to prepare what they could carry. Essential supplies, their wedding mementos, data crystals containing Lyra's family records from Illyria. Each article they packed was a reminder of a life they had built, a tapestry of memories now threatened by the government. A frantic message from a friend revealed that special enforcer units were already making arrests in the outlying districts. Word on the streets suggested that a more forceful crackdown was imminent. At first light, Jason and Lyra made their way to a safe house rumored to be maintained by Dax Moreno, a former war ally of Jason's and an infamous smuggler with a knack for getting the impossible done. Dax was a man of roguish charm, haunted by the ghosts of the Orient War, and known to operate in the underbelly of Neo Avalon's sprawling cityscape. Sequestered in a hidden sublevel far beneath the city's bustling surface, the safe house was concealed among labyrinthine corridors lit by flickering fluorescent tubes. Walls of steel and tarnished metal crates lined the passageway, giving off a damp, claustrophobic vibe that turned each breath stifling. Jason knocked on the rusted door, heart pounding, until the sliding hatch opened, revealing Dax's piercing gaze. With a raised brow, Dax sized them up and gestured for them to enter. His voice was gruff, tinged with cynicism. "So, the Earth Unity Council's gone insane, I hear. Figures they'd pull something like this eventually. Didn't expect you to get caught up in the madness, Jason." He nodded respectfully at Lyra before sealing the door behind them. The safe house was modest, a small chamber cluttered with electronic devices, contraband goods, and battered furniture. A single overhead lamp cast shifting shadows that danced across Dax's weathered features. Once they were seated, Dax listened carefully to their plight, occasionally drumming his fingers on the arm of the chair in nervous patterns. Lyra's trembling hands, pressed protectively against her abdomen, told a story in themselves. "They're taking alien spouses," she explained softly, "and I'm carrying a child." Dax's gaze lingered on her, a flicker of sympathy in his otherwise guarded eyes. "That's a problem," he muttered, not unkindly, "but maybe I can help." Jason released a silent breath of relief. If anyone could shepherd them out of Neo Avalon and beyond the Council's reach, it was Dax. He had contacts, means, and, most importantly, a sense of loyalty to an old friend. Dax produced a small glass tablet from within a cluttered drawer, activating its luminescent screen with a tap. "I've got a plan," he said, scanning through data. "They've locked down official transit routes, so forget about legit spaceports. But I know a place, a discreet docking bay on the outskirts. There's a supply freighter leaving for the frontier. Problem is, they'll be scanning for anything organic, especially anything with Illyrian DNA. We need a better disguise." The notion hung in the air. A hush descended as Dax swiped a finger across the glass surface, revealing designs for synthetic coverings, an android shell. "We'll have to pass Lyra off as a machine," he continued grimly. "Something that the enforcers won't bother to check too closely. Under normal circumstances, it'd be an outrageous plan. But these are not normal circumstances." Lyra paled at the idea of disguising herself as an android, stripping away her identity and wearing a soulless veneer. Jason took her trembling hand, gave it a gentle squeeze. "It's risky," he said softly, "but we don't have a choice. The Council is after every alien spouse, and once they find out about you, about our baby," his voice failed him there, horror twisting in his expression. They all knew what fate awaited families like theirs under this ominous new regime. Gulping down her dread, Lyra nodded in agreement. She would endure any humiliation for the chance to protect their child. Over the next few hours, Dax laid out the specifics. He would procure a specialized bodysuit, engineered from advanced nanopolymers, that would mask Lyra's skin and vitals to appear entirely mechanical. Her eyes, so distinct in their gentle glow, would be concealed behind tinted lenses, and her delicate Illyrian features would be veiled beneath a synthetic visage. Jason shuddered at the thought, watching her slip into that cold, manufactured shell. It felt like a violation of her essence. Yet, as their only path to freedom, it had to be done. In the flickering light of the safe house, they deliberated over every detail, clinging to the last strands of hope. "I'll get you two out," Dax declared, no small measure of defiance in his voice. "But time is short. Valeria Dane herself has been assigned to oversee the crackdown. She's as relentless as they come. If she sets her sights on you, you'd better pray." Valeria Dane, the name that had commanded fear throughout the conflict-ridden years, was rumored to be the Council's most capable operative, known for her unwavering pursuit of any mission. The mention of her brought a chill that seemed to seep into the walls. Even in the subterranean enclosure, Jason and Lyra felt the weight of her reputation pressing in like an invisible hand. The clock was ticking, and the city above them was stirring to life with a new wave of raids. Soon, every inch of Neo Avalon would be under the watchful eyes of the authorities. The trio pressed on, finalizing the plan that might be their only chance at survival. At dusk, they ventured out, each footstep laden with dread. Lyra was carefully tucked inside a hooded cloak, the half-finished android bodysuit tucked under her arm. The alleyways echoed with distant shouts, the glare of searchlights whipping across the sky, while the whir of patrol drones raked the darkness like mechanical vultures. Jason felt his throat tighten with fear every time a drone's beam scanned a nearby rooftop. Their path was a winding route through the underbelly of Neo Avalon. They kept to the narrow streets, where neon signs sputtered and steam vents exhaled hissing clouds, forging a ghostly labyrinth. When they reached a hidden compartment in an abandoned tech shop, Dax's contact, a stooped figure with meticulous hands, fitted Lyra with the rest of the synthetic suit. Watching Lyra submerge herself in the glossy, silicone-like covering was harrowing. Her lilac skin, once so warm, was coated in an eerie veneer. The tinted lenses dulled the glow in her eyes. Her gentle features disappeared behind the android's synthetic mask, leaving her nearly unrecognizable. When she stepped back into the light, Jason felt his stomach knot. She was there, but also not. He could hardly breathe, torn by anguish that she had to hide her true self. Still, a flicker of hope remained. This was their best chance to protect the child she carried. His hand clasped hers. Though the artificial layers made her palm feel strangely rigid, he could sense the subtle tremor beneath. She whispered, "I can't believe this is necessary. But for our baby, I'll do anything." In the flicker of neon from the broken shop window, Jason caught the faint quiver in her voice, the vulnerability she tried so hard to conceal. He wanted to promise her the stars, if only to shield her from this cruelty, but the words caught in his throat. Slowly, he guided her out of the shop, his arm protectively around her. Dax provided an encrypted pass that would grant them entry to the secret docking bay. Their plan was to slip onto a transport heading off-world, away from the Council's sphere of power, and find refuge among the independent stations in the far reaches of the system. Yet, as they turned to leave, a screech of sirens ripped through the night. The city's watchful eyes had spotted them. A group of heavily armed enforcers, faces obscured by dark helmets, rushed from the shadows. Chaos erupted in the form of blinding spotlights and shouted commands. Jason's mind went white with fear. He huddled closer to Lyra, her body trembling, or was that his? But then something astonishing happened. In a burst of swirling lights, the street lamps overhead exploded in a shower of sparks. The enforcers' rifles jammed with a metallic screech. A moment of sheer confusion seized everyone. It was as if an unseen hand had plucked the power from their machinery. Jason and Dax exchanged stunned looks, while Lyra clutched her abdomen, eyes wide with shock. She gasped in pained wonder, her trembling voice barely audible. "It's the baby. I can feel something happening." It defied any scientific explanation they knew. The unborn child, half human and half Illyrian, had somehow tapped into the electrical current around them, bending it to its will. Heart hammering, Jason seized the moment. He grabbed Lyra's hand, and with Dax leading, they dashed into the labyrinthine alleys. Behind them, the enforcers struggled to restore their gear and coordinate pursuit, but the group was gone, vanished into the darkness like ghosts. And so the chase began in earnest. Over the next day and night, Jason, Lyra, and Dax traversed the hidden veins of Neo Avalon, seeking safe passage while the city crackled with tension. Rumors reached them of drones grounded by inexplicable malfunctions, doors that refused to unlock, cameras that fizzled out, always when the enforcers got too close. Even Dax, who prided himself on never being surprised, found himself shaking his head in disbelief. "It's the kid," he muttered during a rare, quiet moment in a deserted storage hold. "The unborn baby is rewiring the city." Lyra wrapped her arms around her abdomen, tears glinting in her now dimmed eyes. She didn't know how to explain it, but she could sense a swirling energy within, a pulse that blended her body's Illyrian essence with some new, impossible power. "Maybe it's a mutation," Jason offered softly. "Some result of our combined DNA." But in truth, none of them had any idea what was happening. What they did know was that the baby's nascent abilities offered a shield, an advantage they desperately needed. Even so, the pressure was mounting. Each incident of random electronic disruption left a trail for the authorities to follow, fueling the rumor that a powerful hybrid was on the loose. Soon, the bounty for capturing them skyrocketed. Posters bearing a grainy image of Jason and an approximation of Lyra's features dotted the city's digital notice boards. The council, in a move that revealed deeper intentions, announced that such hybrids were a threat to humanity's future. This revelation proved to be more than propaganda. In a hidden data vault that Dax managed to crack open, they uncovered the existence of Project Genesis, a secret government program that had begun decades before. A flurry of confidential documents scrolled across the flickering screen, references to experiments with alien DNA, speculation about engineered children, and cryptic statements about the next phase of human evolution. Jason's stomach twisted at the implications. "They've been preparing for this," he mumbled, voice tight with disgust. "They outlaw alien marriages, but behind the scenes, they're building hybrids themselves?" Lyra felt a wave of nausea, not just from her pregnancy, but from the betrayal. If the council was orchestrating the entire crisis, her child was more than just an accident of love. It was a missing link in the council's grand plan. Her hand tightened on Jason's as she whispered, "They'll do anything to get our baby. They want to control whatever they think this is. This evolution." Dax's rugged face contorted in fury. "We won't let them." He quickly downloaded the files, stuffing them into a secure data chip. "We'll go public," he insisted. This sort of revelation could spark an outcry across all of Earth's colonies. People won't stand for it if they learn the council has been feeding them a lie. Jason nodded, a grim determination lighting his eyes. They would need help, and they would need to expose the truth before the council could clamp down further. But time was running out, and the city was in a frenzy. Agents, enforcers, drones, and every technology at the council's disposal were searching for them. Yet the baby within Lyra seemed to be growing stronger every day, and with each near capture, it interfered more audaciously, shorting out entire city blocks, disabling large sections of the surveillance network. Valeria Dane herself, a stern woman with silver-streaked hair and an icy demeanor, took to the screens, calling for calm. Her voice, measured yet formidable, echoed throughout the city. "We will find the fugitives. Their child is not to be approached without caution. This is for the greater good." She exuded a sense of unwavering conviction, her eyes dark and resolute, as though even she believed the council's manipulations. Soon, she was at the center of the net that tightened around Jason, Lyra, and Dax, relentlessly hunting them down. The trio, exhausted and near their breaking point, formulated a bold plan. First, they needed to broadcast their story, including the incriminating evidence about Project Genesis, to every corner of the planet. Second, they had to secure safe passage off-world before Valeria's forces finally pinned them down. In a daring maneuver, they breached the signal tower of the Gaius Broadcast Network, an old station that hovered in the upper atmosphere of Neo Avalon. Reaching it required a stolen transport, a precarious flight that skirted the city's detection grids, and a final scramble through the station's outer hull to avoid the main docking bay. Somewhere between hacking the tower's controls and preparing their global broadcast, Lyra winced and clutched her stomach. A wave of pain cut through her like shards of glass. Jason immediately dropped to her side, heart hammering in his chest, while Dax kept watch. Lyra's breath came in sharp gasps, her eyes brimming with a radiant glow, the same luminescence that marked her alien heritage. Jason's pulse thundered with the realization her contractions had begun. The baby was coming sooner than they had anticipated, no doubt spurred by the intense stress and repeated uses of its inexplicable powers. The gravity of that moment pressed down on them, threatening to shatter their carefully laid plans. But they had no choice. They were out of time. Jason, face pale with terror and devotion, gently guided Lyra to a makeshift corner of the station's cargo hold, half hidden behind stacked crates. Every moan from Lyra knifed through him. In the midst of Lyra's anguish, Dax frantically tapped at the broadcast controls. Time seemed to warp, seconds crawling by with each ragged breath, each beep of the console. Finally, Jason whispered reassurance to his wife. "I'm here," he murmured, his hand cradling her head. The alarm klaxons started to wail, letting them know a security breach was detected. Then, with fierce resolve, Dax activated the broadcast, streaming across every available channel, into every household on Earth. Images of classified documents, voice recordings describing the Council's duplicity, the elaborate lies behind the Alien Marriage Prohibition Act, and the truth of Project Genesis all erupted onto screens worldwide. Millions watched in stunned silence as the revelations poured forth. The Council had manipulated fear, orchestrated the scapegoating of aliens, all to control the genetic future of humanity. The final part of the broadcast showed a live feed from the station's security camera, capturing Lyra in labor. Her luminous eyes glowed with an otherworldly brilliance, sweat streaming down her brow. The empathy of billions was awakened as they witnessed a frightened mother clinging to her husband, unfairly branded as a criminal. In that moment, the monstrous facade that the Council had built began to crumble. But it was not enough to simply broadcast. Valeria Dane, unstoppable and formidable, had arrived. Within minutes, the station's corridors echoed with the pounding of boots. Jason clenched his teeth in desperation as the sound of gunfire rattled the metal walls. Dax, rifle in hand, returned fire, calling over his shoulder for Jason to hurry. But Lyra's contractions came fast and hard, and the baby's cry was imminent. With a surge of strength, she pushed, tears streaming down her cheeks as she fought to bring their child into the world. The lights in the cargo hold flickered wildly, an echo of the baby's swirling power, twisting and bending the station's electronics. With a final, piercing wail, Lyra's child entered existence, its faint cries echoing into the station's hollow passages, carried across the broadcast to every viewer on Earth. The baby's skin glistened with a luminous sheen, a living testament to the fusion of human and Illyrian DNA. The station's overhead lights surged, flickered, then stabilized, as though an electric hush had fallen across the cosmos. In that same moment, Valeria Dane burst into the cargo hold, weapon raised. Jason shielded Lyra and the newborn, dread swirling in his mind, as Dax stepped forward, aiming at Valeria. The tension in that instant could have swallowed worlds. Valeria's eyes locked on the baby, her grim visage softened by a flicker of awe. She stood at the threshold, weapon trembling. Perhaps it was the raw vulnerability of the scene, the pure innocence of a newborn child, or the revelations she had just witnessed. Whatever the cause, something in her resolve faltered. Slowly, she lowered her weapon. In a voice tight with conflict, she spoke. This is not a monster. It's just a child." Then a hush overcame the entire station, as all eyes settled on the brilliant infant who had, in mere minutes of being born, upended the illusions of an empire. Dax watched warily, fingers still on the trigger, but Jason exhaled a shuddering breath. Lyra, exhausted and tearful, cradled her baby, oblivious to her own trembling. For that moment, everything hung in the balance. Valeria's communicator crackled, calling her for orders. Outside the station's hull, a full squad of enforcers awaited her command, prepared to storm in and seize Jason, Lyra, and the baby by force. Yet Valeria gave no such order. Instead, she tapped a sequence into her communicator and in a solemn tone informed her subordinates, "Stand down." The child in Lyra's arms opened its eyes, glowing with an ethereal brilliance that radiated not menace but a quiet wonder. The hush endured, as though all the cosmos had paused to take in that single moment. "I've spent my entire career," Valeria said brokenly, "believing that my orders serve the greater good, that we, the Council, safeguarded humanity. But I see now that we've become the very threat we were meant to prevent." Her gaze flicked to the broadcast console, still streaming the scene to millions across the planet. Countless messages, stunned and outraged, were pouring in from viewers who had glimpsed the truth. "The people are rising," Dax murmured, glancing at the feed. "They're calling for the Council's resignation." The seeds of revolution were planted in that very moment. Protests ignited in every major city, from the glittering towers of Neo Avalon to the industrial outskirts of Earth's colonies. Sectors declared their independence, outraged by the Council's manipulations. Large waves of public support surged for alien families, who were previously shunned under the hateful law. The revolution was at hand, and the Council's carefully woven tapestry of lies unraveled under the glare of public scrutiny. Exhausted, tearful, and in shock, Lyra clutched her child protectively. Jason squeezed her hand, a fresh wave of hope coursing through him. Valeria knelt, slowly, in a gesture of contrition. "I will help you expose everything, if you'll let me. I can get you to safety, ensure the child receives the protection it deserves." Her voice caught. "I only ask, don't let everything we fought for crumble into hate." Jason looked at Lyra, then at Dax. All three shared the same astonished relief, the same cautious optimism. Lyra, her eyes glistening with tears, extended a trembling hand toward Valeria. "Help us end this," she whispered. Word of Valeria's change of heart spread rapidly. The station's enforcers hesitated, receiving conflicting orders from a council that was no longer certain of its authority. Meanwhile, a new wave of anger and determination spread like wildfire among the populace, united in their rejection of the council's tyranny. Within hours, the seat of power was all but besieged by protesters, their chants reverberating through the luminous streets. "Free the alien families," they roared. "Down with the council." The tension in Neo Avalon soared, as rumor had it the council might unleash more violent tactics. But a single spark of compassion had ignited a blaze. The movement for liberation, now championed by everyday citizens and even some of the council's former allies, refused to be contained. Fueled by the broadcast revelations, entire regiments of the Earth Unity military refused to carry out deportation orders. Freed from fear and galvanized by the injustice they had witnessed, humans and aliens stood side by side in a show of solidarity unseen in the Council's reign. As the uprising reached its zenith, Jason, Lyra, Dax, and Valeria made their way back to the surface, child in Lyra's arms, amid a throng of supporters who cheered at the sight of the newborn. The baby's wide, curious eyes reflected the glowing lights around them, radiant with unspoken potential. Dax kept a watchful guard, but the streets now echoed with celebration rather than the heavy thump of boots. The old regime was collapsing under the weight of its own lies. In a final confrontation at the Council's citadel, Valeria confronted her former superiors. Their pleas for loyalty fell on deaf ears. "Your cruelty, your hypocrisy," she declared, "ends today." Cameras rolled, capturing every ounce of her fury, broadcasting her words for all to see. The Council, their lies laid bare, had no recourse but to resign. A wave of exultation broke across the planet as a temporary assembly of citizens stepped in to restore order and protect the freedoms that had been trampled. In the days that followed, alien spouses once in hiding were welcomed back into the open. Families that had been torn apart were reunited in tearful embraces, while volunteers rushed to dismantle the enforcement apparatus that had wrought such destruction. Jason and Lyra found themselves at the heart of a monumental shift in history, praised for their courage in revealing the truth, and for their extraordinary child who had touched the hearts of billions. In the hush of dawn, as a soft roseate glow lit the sky over Neo Avalon, Jason and Lyra stood on a balcony overlooking the city, their newborn cradled gently between them. The babe stared out at the horizon, as though the expanding light piqued its alien curiosity. Jason wrapped an arm around Lyra, pressing a tender kiss to her temple. She leaned into him, marveling at how swiftly everything had changed, from fugitives to symbolic pioneers of a new era. Dax, wearing his trademark smirk, gave a friendly salute from the street below as people crowded around him. He was regaling them with a slightly exaggerated tale of their exploits, but his heartfelt pride shone through. Valeria, too, was there, no longer clad in the council's austere uniform, but in simple civilian attire. She mingled among the crowds, quietly helping to usher in the new order she had once fought against. For the first time in weeks, in months, perhaps in years, hope filled the air in Neo Avalon. Beyond the city, as the news spread, other world stations rallied behind the cause of unity between humans and aliens. The dreaded Alien Marriage Prohibition Act was repealed with sweeping support, as new leaders emerged who were dedicated to forging an interstellar coalition built on trust, empathy, and shared prosperity. The infant in Lyra's arms cooed softly, blinking at the dawn. No one truly understood the extent of the powers that the child might possess, or what its existence truly heralded for the future of human and alien kind. But for Jason, Lyra, and everyone touched by their story, the conclusion was clear. The child represented a bridge between worlds, a living promise that unity could transcend the boundaries written by fear. As life resumed its ebbs and flows, a gentle hush fell over the swirling city lights. The tyranny of the Earth Unity Council faded into memory. In its place rose a greater tapestry of voices, bound by a mutual understanding that differences need not be demonized. The morning sun painted the spires of Neo Avalon in soft gold and violet hues, as if to remind its citizens that a new chapter had begun. Jason, with a contented sigh, glanced from Lyra's loving gaze to the innocent wonder in his child's eyes. His heart brimmed with gratitude. They had survived, not merely for themselves, but for countless others who yearned for the same freedom. Lyra rested her head on his shoulder, and together, they turned their attention to the horizon, a horizon now wide open with possibility. In that moment, the child let out a little laugh, a gleeful sound that danced upon the gentle breeze. And in that simple, joyous note lay the hope of generations to come, echoing across the stars and beckoning all who heard it toward a future shaped by courage, compassion, and the unbreakable bonds of love.